Welcome to Blender Frenzy. I'm Justin. In this video, we are going to take the Happy Thanksgiving Day card and separate it into pieces like this, just of the different images and the text. And we're going to do that using masks. So we've got this mask here that we start with. And then we created a masking workspace where we actually have different mask layers. We're just cutting out the pieces here. Enable the mask over here like that. Now we can just draw masks like we did around each of the parts and isolate them individually. So if I just take all of these off, you can see I've just isolated the Happy Thanksgiving text, and we can do that one by one individually like this. We saved them all out as PNGs, and then we re-imported them just like this as pieces together, and then we created our own background, and then we put them all together. What this is going to allow us to do is to animate the individual images if we want, but most importantly, it's going to allow us to animate our text to make it look like it's being handwritten in the same way that you see the strokes here on the page. But this will be a multi-part video, so this is part one, just the masking, and the handwriting will be in the next video. Okay, so step one is to find a Happy Thanksgiving card, and I didn't have any luck on Pixabay or Pexels, so I thought, why not just generate one from an AI, which I have very mixed thoughts about AI, but this was really helpful, so I just searched for free online AI, and then I found this desgo.com. So text to image, I said Happy Thanksgiving card, and boom, it gave me this. And this looks actually pretty good. I mean, except we've got a turkey that's coming out of a pumpkin. I think that's a pumpkin, or maybe it's turning into a pumpkin, or it's half pumpkin. I don't know, but thus is the nature of AI. So I'm just going to right click and then save image as, and then I'm just going to save it as, I already did one, but I'm going to save this one as well. Okay, so these are the two that I have. This is the one I just generated, and this is the one that I generated when I was practicing for this. And I actually like this one better, I think, but you can see over here we have some pumpkins, we have a turkey, a separate turkey, but we also have a pumpkin with feet, turkey feet, and then some growth growing out over here. So I just wanted to show you how I generated it, but you could do the same thing that I'm going to be doing with both of these. We're going to start with this one though. So step two is to edit it in a video sequence editor. So let's open up a new instance of Blender and choose new video editing. I'm going to collapse this, and then I'm just going to drag in my image. Now I'm going to go to view and then uncheck limit view to contents. That way I can middle mouse and drag all the way around like this. It just gives me more freedom. And I'm just going to snap it to the beginning here and then period on the numpad to go in. I'm pressing control and middle mouse button to move this and zoom in and out. So you can do that. I also don't need the previews here because it's just a single image. So I'm going to uncheck thumbnails, but I'm going to go ahead and save this blend file. And in this step, we're just going to prep our card. So depending on what kind of animation you want, you could still have this card. So this looks like a physical card that is set on a white background that's actually in the real world, just standing up. But for simplicity's sake, I'm just going to use the front of it as like an e-card. So what I'm going to do first is make sure we have the scale at 1. So that is the original size of our image. And then I'm just going to scale the sides down and the top so that it fits. I'm going to also come over here. If you don't see this over here, just press T to open up that toolbar. I'm going to click and hold and then select tweak. That way I can just click and drag things straight in the preview. And then we can actually pull this down because we don't need that. We can have more real estate up here. So I'm just going to kind of put that here and then okay, so that's not too bad. Now, the reason why we're starting with the video sequence editor is because we want to actually isolate all of the text and the images from the background. Because if we're going to have any animation of the text going across the screen or the images coming in, we're going to need to actually have a solid background. And right now we don't. And if you just scroll in here and we come over here to the tool panel again and click sample, if I just start to click and drag, you can see down at the bottom, it gives us this bar that if I hover my mouse over, you can see the color. And if I click and drag over the background, you can see that it's changing. The numbers are changing ever so slightly. Even though it's mostly the same color, it's still changing. And that's going to be really obvious for the method that we're using. So let's isolate this. The good news is that we have mostly darker stuff on a white background. Now with this one, we have mostly lighter images on a darker background. So depending on what your image looks like, you might have to tweak a few things differently. But I'll show you what I do. So I'm going to duplicate this up. And then on this one, let's see. I'm going to change this one to a video sequencer. Let's collapse this, and then let's open this. So we have all of our options over here. I'm also going to take this corner and then pull it down to collapse it into this area, just so that we have more real estate over here. And then I can hover over here, press N to close that. So depending on your image, something you could do is come to color and then decrease the saturation and increase the multiplication, or decrease the multiplication. And you can see that it's giving this black and white image. But because the images are a little bit lighter, this is probably not going to work for us. So I'm going to put that back up to 1. And in fact, I'm going to take the saturation and pull it up to 2. And let's see if I go to 5. Yeah, so let's do that. And now you can scroll in, you can see where the deviation of the color is. You can start to see that there. But what I'm doing is making that contrast a little greater. So let's go to modifiers, add strip modifier, curves. And if I go to red and take this far one and pull it all the way down, go to the green one and take this one and pull it all the way down. Now we're getting a black and blue channel. And I can even take this down. Maybe we go to 3. That's probably good. I mean, even 2, actually probably 2 is going to be the best for us. I wonder what 1 looks like. Now 1 is too light, so 2 is just fine. So you're just going to have to play around with these things. Also, depending on your image, you could instead bring the blue channel down and then leave the green channel up. But you can see that doesn't give us the result we want because these are still not dark enough. So that is why I chose to have the blue one all the way up, just like that. There are many different techniques that you could use. I mean, you could even use a brightness and contrast for the image. But this works for me for this image. Now we just need to make this black and white. So let's go to hue correct, and then we can collapse this. And then the saturation, we only have blue and black. So we can just take that blue down like that if we wanted to. But an easier way is if we actually, I'll just undo that. If we select one of these and then shift select the ones in the middle, click X, it will delete all of those, and then we can just bring both of these down. And that will get rid of all of the color. Now we have a black and white image. We might be able to also add in either a color balance or another curves. We can probably crunch that with the curves there like that. Okay, so I think that's good. We've got a good black and white image. This is going to help us to cut out all the foreground stuff from our image and leave the background. But I do realize this is the opposite of what we want. So we could either come to another curves and then just take these and flip those. And now we have this flipped and we can turn that on and off. And I do like that. The other way we could do it is we could have just done the same thing over here, modified just this one. But I like this to be able to flip it just with a button. So let's do that. This is the one we want. So now all we have to do is take this one. Let's rename it. Let's go to strip tab and then we'll just name this mask. Now we can select the bottom one. So if I right click, you can see we have our original image here. But if I just select this one, go to modifiers, add strip modifier mask, and then with a strip mask, I'm going to just choose our mask. Now we're not seeing anything different because our mask is actually over top of it. And if you know the video sequence editor, if you look down at the timeline, this is like where the camera is and it's looking down. So anything on top is going to be the top layer in our preview. So I'm going to press H to hide that. And now you can see our mask is affecting our original image. And this checkerboard pattern is the transparency beneath it. But I do realize that if we enable our overlays again, this is our image. It's all the way out here like this. This is okay, but I'd rather work with the modified image itself and not have to worry about any transformation. So what I'm going to do is disable the mask, and then let's save this image out. So let's go to our rendering, press F12, and let's save this out as an image. So here's our original. I'm going to just save it as Thanksgiving card crop, and then we'll save this as a JPEG at 100%. There we go. And now in here, I'm going to just add the cropped version because that fits this exactly. Okay, so we want to do the same thing, duplicate this one up, and then cool thing with this is I can actually select this one and then shift select our mask. And with all of our modifiers on this, we can actually say copy to selected. So this is the active one with the white outline. And then we have the other ones that are selected. If we have multiple selected, they will be in the orange outline. So I just want this one first and then shift select this one. And we see all of our modifiers. So we can just click copy to selected strips. And you can either replace or append. I'm just going to say append, even though we didn't have anything prior. And now if we click this one, you can see we have all of those same options. So if we look, that should be the exact same, and it's not because we also, remember, on our strip tab, we changed the color saturation up to 2, and there you go. Okay, so now we have the exact same thing. I'm going to save it, and we can actually get rid of these and just work with these here. Okay, so then this one will be a mask with, we didn't change, let's go ahead and just for consistency's sake, let's change this to mask. And then choose our mask. Hide the mask, and this is what we have. Okay, next thing we're going to do is duplicate this workspace. We're going to call this mask. And I'm going to click and drag this corner to pull out another area over here. Change this one to image editor. Change view to mask. And let's add in a new mask. This is going to be mask, we'll just say separate, because we're going to separate each of these pieces. Not each of them, but we'll just separate a few of the images from each other and the text. So let's start with the text. If we press F12 to render this out, and you don't see anything because we need to choose our render result. There we go. Now let's zoom in. Up over here, I'm going to press and hold Control and click and drag to the left. If I go to the right, it goes the wrong way. If I go to the left, then it goes the right way. The right way is this little handle pointing outwards. So I'm just going to kind of go around, and it doesn't matter if you make a mistake, you can actually click and drag any of these and the handles to move those. But I'm going to drag it all the way around the text, and you can go off the screen as well. I'm going to undo that because it really does depend on where you have your last selection. So make sure you have the last point here selected, and then I can click and drag. There we go. Just going to go all the way around the text. This is going to be a little tricky in here. Not too tricky, but a little bit more finesse. And then when you're almost finished, just come over and press Alt-C to close that loop. And if you want to see the result, we can come up over to this menu and scroll over to Mask Display and click Overlay. This is all the area that we're keeping. Now the white area is everything that will be visible. The black is everything that will be invisible. If for some odd reason these are flipped for you and the inside is black and the outside is white, just press N to open up the properties panel. And then where it says this opacity here, just click the button right next to it where it says invert the masks black and white. And then it'll invert it for you. But of course, mine is correct this way, so we will leave it like that. So now if we come to our strip and select the bottom one, go to our modifiers, we're going to add in another mask, and this time we're going to click mask and then choose our mask separate. And ta-da! Now we only have our Thanksgiving. And if for some reason we needed this inverted, we can just come back over here and click that button again, and then we can come down here and refresh, which is by default Control E, refresh all here. And then it should refresh. Otherwise, you can just unmute and mute this again, and that should refresh it. But now you can see everything that else is visible because that's where the white area is over here. And all the text is invisible. So you have a lot of options with masking. So let's reverse that again, refresh, and that's what it should look like. Let's uncheck overlay here, and then if we press F12 again, we have that. So let's go ahead and scroll over here, go to image, and we're going to save this as, I'm just going to type in text and change this to JPEG again and save image. And in order to prevent us from continuing to change that to JPEG, let's go to rendering, the output tab, and then come down here. I'm going to do a /enter to make it the current directory of our blend folder, and then click open. Then I'm going to go up, and then I'm just going to navigate to our folder here and choose accept. And then let's change the file format to JPEG, and then change this to 100%, uncheck overwrite, and then we can save it. I'm also going to make sure that the color management is sRGB standard, which it should be because we chose video editing as a new blend file. But I am noticing that we've got this haze kind of going across here, and that could be because the mask, let's just disable this mask here and see what we have. Okay. Yeah, so if we enable the mask, it doesn't show it in here, or maybe it does ever so slightly. I don't know if you can see that. I can. Yeah, it's ever so slight in here. So let's crunch that. Maybe make this mask a little bit more black and white. Unhide that. So that seems like that's pretty black. We could reverse these, so I can click this button and bring that down. I guess this will have to go backwards. I don't know if that's actually going to make a difference. Press F12 again. Oh, we've got to hide that. And let's see what we have. Okay, that's a little bit better. So I'm just going to save this as, and now it brings us right to the same folder, and we have JPEG as the default, so we don't have to keep changing that. So I'm just going to write over this, and you can tell that I'm writing over this because we have the same name, and there's this red bar. That's the only warning you're going to get to save over anything in Blender, so be careful, but I do want to save it over it, so I'm going to save as image. And actually, I made a huge mistake. I don't want to save this as a JPEG. I want to save it as a PNG with alpha because we want it to be transparent. So anyway, we're going to save image as, and then let's change this to PNG with RGBA. Save it so that the next ones we create will be PNGs as well. Okay, so now let's select here so that we can see our mask here, see this separate, and we can also enable and disable this, because we want to disable it now and press F12 to render everything out again, because we're going to make another mask layer. So we'll just say text for this mask layer, and then we're going to disable it in everything here. We're going to click plus to make a new one. We'll call this pumpkin 1 and close that. And then we're just going to come over here and take this first pumpkin, and we'll do the same thing and just mask around this. Again, I'm just control clicking and dragging, and then Alt C to close that. And again, mask display overlay, that's the part we're going to keep. So now if I enable this again, you can see it's just keeping this part. If I want to change back, then I can come over here, disable this and enable this, and then refresh it over here, or just come over here and refresh. So let's change that back, refresh. And now we have this. So now I'm just going to save this one out, but we have to actually F12 again, and then image, save as. And now we have PNG RGBA already. I don't want to save it over my text. We're going to call this pumpkin 1. PNG is fine. Okay, so I'm just going to continue to do the same thing, creating mask layers for different graphics on the image. One thing to make sure of, though, is when you create a new mask layer, to select that mask layer, even if it's displayed. If it's not selected, then you're going to be placing your mask or creating your mask on the wrong mask layer. So make sure it's selected as well. Okay, so now let's just come over here. I should go back to video editing here. And then we're going to add in all of our pieces. Select all of them and then just snap them all together, and they should line up all in the same spot because we didn't move them at all. And now let's add in a color that's going to go on the bottom. Right now that's just black. So let's come up to the strip tab and we're going to change the color. But what do we want to change it to? Let's come over here and let's just see the original image without our masks. So I want to change it to a very similar color here. So with the timeline cursor over here showing so that we can see this, let's select the color, and then in the strip tab, let's check this color, and then we can take this eyedropper. And since we know that this isn't a solid color, we can either click, or if we press and hold Alt, we can click and drag to get a sample, and it kind of averages out. So that's the color now that we have, and if we come back over here, you can see it's pretty much the same exact thing. I think this needs a little bit more color though, so I'm going to up the saturation just a little bit, like that. I like that a little bit better. It makes it have a little bit more of a fall type color rather than this bright white. So I like this a lot better, just personal preference. Okay, so I'm also going to go ahead and save this out. So let's go to rendering, just F12 like that, and save this. We'll say my card 1. And this one, I do want it to be a JPEG. There we go. This is just so that we can have full control over any of these individual parts. We can animate them differently. And this is going to help the text to make it look like it's being handwritten across the page. But that will be done in the next video, so stay tuned and you'll see me in that one.